There it is.
There it is. All right. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Orange Crushing It. I am your host and CEO of the Mr. Orange. My name is Frank Clark, also known as Mr. Orange, and I am beyond excited again today because I have a very good friend of mine joining us on the broadcast. This guy and I have met a few years back at a Tony Robbins event, and he's become a really good friend. He and I have the same twisted sense of humor, so tend to laugh at just about everything the same. And his name is Adrian Park. And Adrian, just a little backstory on Adrian, he spent about the first 15 years of his career in banking, working for JP Morgan in Chicago. He then leveraged all that knowledge and co-founded Sage Private Wealth Group, also in Chicago. And the company just took off. It was exploding, a lot of exponential growth in just 3 years. But even despite all that, in spite of all the success that he was having, he was at 40 years old. He ended up getting divorced, separated from his kids, out of the Sage business, and found himself homeless and driving for Uber in Chicago. So at 40 years old, man, his life took a major twist, and then he turned it all around. And right now he's the CEO of a construction business, Alex Restoration in Western PA. And over the last 4 years, Adrian's been very instrumental, if you will, and a leader in that industry. He's doubled the revenue in that company. But here's the cool part. He increased the profitability by 47 times. 47 times of profitability. That's friggin' amazing. And he's an innovative guy. He loves to thrive. He's great energy, great fun. Welcome to the show, Adrian. How are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. So, I mean, what a hero story. You're riding high, right? You got all the trappings of success, right? Probably the house, the car, all of that, right? And then, man, right off the ledge. Tell us a little bit about you. Where you come from and what you're all about.
Yeah, well, I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania. I didn't ever plan on being back here. I went to school in the Midwest at North Central University in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Studied theology, and decided in my junior year that I wanted to go into investments, selling investments. And so I did, and I landed in Chicago, and never, ever, ever wanted to leave Chicago. So it's a great town. And so even though I'm from Western Pennsylvania, and Pittsburghers certainly have a lot of pride, I sort of felt like I was an adopted Chicagoan. And there's still a part of me that's feels like I'm still a Chicagoan. And I mean, it's 15 of the most informative years of my life there. But while I was there, started a family. I had a very good career in banking and investments at JP Morgan. And, and then at 40 years old, like you said, in my bio, had nothing, and homeless isn't like, that's not like a euphemism, or that's not hyperbole. Like I had a car, and I would sleep in my car, and I would go out, and the places I used to entertain at, you would take people out to like hotels, and use the lobby bars to take people to drinks and whatnot. And I happen to know some of these places really well because I had frequented them as a banker. And so I would go back and use their handicap bathrooms, which was a private bathroom. And that's where I would clean up in the morning, to then go out and get dressed and go out and drive as an Uber driver.
Grab a couple olives off the bar, maybe, lemon rind.
It was an interesting experience.
Wow.
So I mean, at night I would pee in a milk jug, and
you wanted to save it for some reason.
Well, you didn't want to. The last thing I wanted was the police to roll by and just see me outside, doing that. So I would, anyway. So it was. I mean, that's very real, and so, I didn't plan on. I've never planned on leaving investments. I certainly didn't plan on being in construction. It just sort of happened. I think like life does, right? I mean, life happens, and I consider myself, I wouldn't say lucky, Although there's an element of luck and sort of like, grace and everything, I believe. But, I think I feel blessed and I'm grateful that, I hit rock bottom so early. Right. And not, not at 60, not at 70, not at 55, but, with a lot of experience at the time, and, and grateful that happened then, because it wasn't easy at all, but, it helped. I was grateful that it happened early. At least that's the story I told myself, that it was early. And I also am grateful that I kind of stumbled on some of Tony Robbins' videos on YouTube, because I certainly couldn't afford any of his material. I stumbled on his stuff and just started just inhaling it. And that was really the beginning of coming back, if you will, from the dead, professionally and personally. I mean, it was a very dark time in my life. I went to the darkest places, if you know what those are, and decided not to do some of the things that I was thinking about doing in terms of taking my own life. And I'm grateful, because today, as you said, I have a second career in construction, and, I'm having the most fun in life that I've ever had. I've got the gift of, seeing my children and spending time with them over FaceTime now. That wasn't happening before. I have this business that I run that I love and that have come to love, because there were times where it wasn't so good. I mean, those numbers, those numbers are true today, but they weren't true a couple of years ago. In fact, it was the opposite. We were losing money.
Well, any entrepreneur that's listening is going to understand that fully, right? I mean, if you're running a business, we know the ebbs and flows, right? And we know that sometimes it's ramen noodle week. That's all we can even afford, right? Because we got to make payroll or whatever it takes.
Absolutely, yes.
So,
I have experienced those things now in two different businesses. I was fortunate. The business that I founded with my partner in Chicago, we had a lot of early success, but the first year and a half, we put a lot of money in, and, it was, the business ended up in a good place, but we made sacrifices and, put money in to make payroll and all the stuff that I know you've done as well. It's, and I've made similar sacrifices in this business in the last couple of years, but that's what it takes.
One of the things you mentioned, and I find it interesting, you said at 40, this all happened, right? And you said, and I had enough time. It's amazing to me how many people out there, and maybe there's some people that are listening right now that go, oh my God, at 40, because there's people, I'm sure they're listening to the broadcast that are under 40 and thinking, oh my God, to start all over again at 40, I gave up 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
But you didn't really give anything up. And, you lost some money monetarily and, your standard of living obviously changed.
An interesting way to put it.
Right. Well, yeah. Okay. You were dead broke. Shit. If I wasn't such a, avid Lyft driver or Lyft participant, Lyft customer, you and I could have been friends. We met through Uber. No, but I just find it fascinating that you were like, okay, at 40, I still had a lot of my life left. And that's a great perspective, because some people think that at 25, oh shit, these things aren't happening for me. I'm over. 30, I'm over. But even 55, I mean, I redid my entire life basically at 60. Yeah. And, you rise from the ashes, as you will, right?
Yeah.
And you find the intestinal fortitude, you find what's in you. And I know you have that. That's that orange energy, that drive, that driven, that sense of accomplishment, that, that never say never kind of mentality. And congrats to you for recognizing it. And, for looking at your life and going, I'm still young, no matter what time of life it is, right?
Well, I think, there was, I live in Western Pennsylvania. I live in downtown Pittsburgh. So I have to say this. So one of my reference points, I'm actually getting chill bumps telling you this as I go into this thing that I remembered. So, one of the things that I did well when I had nothing and there was no, because during that time, like as I was bouncing along on the bottom, I was trying to put deals together. I tried to put deals together for some friends of mine out east. I tried to put deals together with some people that I'd met before I left Sage. And, none of those things worked, none of them. And then like I had this experience where, and I've actually never told this story publicly. So I had this experience where it was early 2016. So this is just a little more than 4 years ago. And I'm out driving one morning, and so I would get up at like between 2:15 and 3:15 in the morning, because one, I was terrified that I was going to pick somebody up that I knew, because here I was, a hotshot banker with, then with my own business, and then I'm nothing, right? Or at least that was my, what I believed. And so I would get up super early, but then I also, what I learned or discovered by doing that was that, you could end up doing a lot of rides to the airport early in the morning because people get up to fly early, which I had forgotten I used to do. So it was kind of, it was slick because it was like, you got paid really good to go to Midway or O'Hare. And it was just like, a couple of them, instead of like all these dinks and dunks and dodging early morning traffic in Chicago, which, can be interesting. So I would get up super early, and I would basically drive from like 3 to like 9 or 10 or whatever. So one morning I'm out and I'm doing all these people, picking people up at their apartments, taking them downtown, to their office buildings. And I get a name that I recognize. That happened often because, I knew a fair amount of people, knew a lot of people in Chicago. And you don't see pictures, so at least goes back 4 years. I don't know what it was like now, but back then you didn't have a picture of who you're picking up, just the first name. So I see that and I go, okay, I know someone with that name. I go to I make a left on this person's street, and I'm one building away, and I see that it is my former assistant at JP Morgan and her boyfriend, partner, I think now husband, I'm assuming they got married, I don't know, standing outside of their building, and he used to work on my team. So that's actually how they met. So she was my assistant, he was on my team at JP Morgan, and I'm now going to pick them up and be their Uber driver. So like all of these,
drive around the block about 8 times.
Well, so I canceled the ride immediately.
Okay.
And made a hard, quick right-hand turn to the semicircle drive in the building next to theirs, like went the other way, called one of my best friends and was like, you're not going to believe what happened. He also happens to be a real estate investor. And I was like, give me something to do, please. I cannot, because I had no deals. I had nothing. I had no job prospects. I'm just driving for Uber. And I'm, as a business person, entrepreneur inside, I'm going out of my mind. Right.
Right.
So I was like, give me something to do. I will, he would cold call property owners in Nashville. He's in Nashville, and like a dear friend of mine. And he's brilliant, and he made great money basically finding people that wanted to sell, connecting, like doing the deal where he would sell, he would go put money down and then turn and basically, I think it's called assign that to a contractor developer, and then they would develop it. And so he'd make a little bit, they'd make a little bit when they sold it to the end, buyer. And it was a great business for several years. So I was like, give me your list. I will call everybody.
No, but was this guy now driving for Lyft? What happened to the people that were standing by there waiting to get to the airport?
Well,
is there a happy ending for them?
Well,
they at least get another driver.
I'm sure they got another ride.
Okay.
And I'm sure they had a story, because as an Uber driver, your face was on there.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They saw that Adrian was coming to pick him up. So I'm the way I played the story out in my head is they had a story like, guess who was going to be our Uber driver this morning?
Right.
So
who's incredibly successful now, right? There you go. What a turn.
Well, yeah, I hadn't thought about that part, but that was a story I told myself back then. And so I used that though. I didn't use it. I wasn't thinking of as using it back then. 4 years ago, I was like, I said to my buddy, I'm like, give me something to do. And so I cold called people in Nashville to ask them if they wanted to sell to Josh, sell to us. And that's how I started. And so I thought this was the way back for me. So a couple months after cold calling basically every day for 2 to 4 to 5 hours, I had 3 deals in the pipeline. And one was 2 were under contract, and one was like he was getting to getting to a contract, like where he'd put a contract together and put earnest money down. And so all those deals, it was like 30 grand to me, which was like, a windfall. All right.
Sure.
Died. All of them died.
Oh, no.
And so in the meantime, I thought, well, I can do this. I can cold call from anywhere. So I moved out of the apartment I couldn't afford in Chicago, back to Newcastle where my parents lived. I moved back with my parents, which, is an incredible experience if you ever have the chance at 40.
It's a little humbling. Yeah, sure.
Move back in with your folks.
Yeah.
And was cold calling. All 3 deals fall apart. So now I'm in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, population 25,000 people. And I'm basically making the decision, do I go to Dunkin' Donuts or do I go to McDonald's to work? Because there's nothing around here.
Isn't it amazing how, we have all this great experience in our life. And then when we hit a spot where we go, okay, you lose something great, like your career, okay? Or your relationship or whatever, right? It's devastating at the moment. And right away, we forget that we've learned anything. We automatically go right to the bottom. Oh, I got to be a barista at Starbucks. Not to, hey, any of you baristas at Starbucks right now that are listening, by the way, I'm not downplaying being a great barista.
Right.
What I am saying, though, is we always forget that we have, human capital, all the people we know, all the friends we have. Right? We've collected all this, especially over 40 years, right? And talents, all of our skills and all. But it's amazing how we go, nope, I can't do anything anymore. I'm toast. I'm done.
It's over.
Life's over. Check the box. So it's fascinating that you think that way, but it's also quite common, right?
It is. I mean, at that point, it was that was now June of 2006. I was halfway through 2016. 6 months before that, I'd made the decision not to kill myself. And so I was past that point, but I was literally like, I don't know what to, I was like, I don't know what to do, like, am I going to call my professional contacts and they're going to be like, where are you? Well, I'm in Newcastle, like, I didn't know where to go. And so actually what I did was after that deal, those deals all fell apart. And what I didn't know what was happening at the time is that basically the margin in the Nashville real estate market, the margin for what we're doing basically got squeezed out because the price where people were selling at, all the comps were higher than that Josh could afford to offer. And that's what happened. So I saw that as a business person, I saw that happening. And I realized this is dead, right? So if I put time into this, I'm burning my time. Like I can figure something else out. So after that, I basically for a couple of weeks, I didn't do anything. I did nothing. And I started reading Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. And I'm a pretty fast reader, but that wasn't fast enough for me. So then I went onto YouTube because again, I couldn't afford any of his material. So I went onto YouTube and I started just watching video after video. And I actually said out loud to myself, this is my job. Like, I'm going to like this guy. Cause my buddy, Josh, the same guy that the real estate guy, he had actually turned me on to Tony. He had done, Release the Power Within, Date with Destiny, and done the whole tour. Right. And so he would talk to me about Uncle Tony, right? and about these things I had never heard of, these ideas and like principles. And I was hooked, but I never really followed through on it. In fact, I had a ticket to Date with Destiny in December of 15 that I didn't use because I didn't have the money to get there and to stay there. And I didn't want to ask my parents. So he gave me a ticket which is insane to get a Date with Destiny ticket. And then I can't go, and not to figure out a way to get there. So anyway, I started watching all these YouTube videos of Tony, and that's where I saw the thing that like was the inflection point in my life. And he was doing an interview that was not with an outlet I'd ever heard of or a magazine or whatever website. And he was talking about the power of meaning. And he was like, it's not the events that happen to you that bring you pain or happiness or joy. He's like, it's the meaning that you assign to them. And I was like, whoa. And so I like did the rewind thing, 25 seconds. And then I did it again. I watched it again. And I just paused the video and I sat back and I was like, wait a minute, hold on. Because at that time I wasn't seeing my kids. I was broke, and if not for moving back with my parents, would be homeless again. And I was like, wait a minute. So all this stuff, because it was obviously also, I mean, I would go into these fits of like, and anyone listening that's experienced this knows exactly what I'm talking about. You have a thought, right? You have one thought, one memory, and you take that memory and then you go to the next sad memory, to the next sad memory, to the next sad memory. And before you know it, you're literally melting down from a thought, a memory, into like deep sadness, into deeper sadness. And before you know it, you're into full on depression. You can't move, right?
Sure. You're just stacking all these experiences that were
absolutely.
look similar. And then all the meanings it had.
Like, how did this happen? How did I mess this up? What, and just like, and this like self-defeating. So I recognized that. I was like, wait a minute. So hold on. If this is true, like if he's right about this, I don't have to be so sad all the time. And so I just thought about that. And I thought about it and I thought about it. And then I kept watching. And that was like late afternoon, early evening. The next morning, and so I went to bed thinking about that. I woke up the next morning and I'm sitting there sort of what I would call meditating, but just really like thinking and pondering and just kind of, having a morning experience, if you will, of whatever I was doing at the time. And I'm thinking about those words again, like it's not the things that happen, it's the meaning that I assign. That was the key thing, that I was the one who chose.
Right. You're in control of that meaning.
I was like, if I can do that. So then I started thinking about the thing that was the hardest was not seeing my children. And without getting into all of how that happened, I did a fabulous job of screwing that up during the divorce in terms of, what I had, what my rights were and what they ended up being. But nonetheless, it was really painful. And so I was thinking, I was like, well, if this is true, then what meaning would I like? If I can assign, that means I can create a meaning. If I can create a meaning, what meaning would I create? And I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like just rolling that around, and then it comes. And I said out loud, I'm the luckiest dad on the planet. My kids are amazing. And the next time I see them, on that day, I'm going to be having the best day of my life.
Wow.
And
what a shift, huh? What a difference.
Well, it's just, as I said that to you just now, I get goosebumps all up and down my arms and legs. And I said that, it's like, when you land on something, right? And it's just, and it's just like, it's just like this seminal moment. And I connected to that. And then I took that and I should say that every morning to myself. Every morning I would say that over and over again. And then I started picturing, what that moment would be like and what that experience would be like. And then I started picturing, like, not just that, but, what I would be wearing and what the looks on my children's faces and the laughs and the smiles and the giggles. And I just rolled that over and just like imagined that moment from that was June of 2016. And on Christmas Eve day of that same year, I saw them again for the first time in person. I hadn't seen them at that point. It was almost 2 years since I'd seen them. So, and there's a lot more that I won't get into, but that belief, that principle of like, it's not the things that happen to us, it's the meaning that we create and then assign, that changed everything for me. And, as a business person today, even like, we're in the middle of, at the time we're shooting this show, it's week 7 or 8 of COVID-19. And, there's a lot of people going through a lot of pain right now. Right.
Absolutely.
And, my personal belief is that, fortunately the business that I run is in a pretty good spot. And it's interesting because a lot of the things that we went through over the last few years, when everyone else was high-fiving and, and doing victory dances, we were hurting. Right. And so I've lived through like 10 crises, in the last 3 years, and I'm not exaggerating, like real, like, moments where it's like, okay, it's nut cutting time. That's the technical term.
Yeah. Well, thanks for clarifying that. I was squirming in my seat there a little bit.
So, but like that, that belief of, I'm the one who decides what this means. It takes, it's like a muscle, right? I mean, when I started strengthening that muscle 4 years ago, it was not a very strong muscle, and I had to really work it a lot. 4 years later, today, I can say with with full confidence and in truth that, I have had a few moments where like those crazy thoughts about, like what's going to happen and what if the economy, what if we have 30 million more people that lose their jobs, and where's our business going to go, and who's going to want us to do business and do work, and is our commercial business going to go away? I've had all those thoughts like you have and everybody else has, because I have a brain that, wants to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. As they call it, the monkey brain, right? That little, noise that's constantly in the back of our heads going,
Yes.
Hey, remember this experience? Remember this event? Remember how you were pissed off? Remember how you were depressed? Let's go back there. That's an easy place. We know how to be depressed and miserable and scared and all that.
Right.
That's comfortable. Let's go do that again.
Or
not.
Right. Or not. And that's, so today that's the choice that I make, most of the time. I have my human moments like anybody else does, and that's really, if we can talk about numbers all day. I mean, I had a great business at JP Morgan for 10 years, basically started with $2 million in assets. And when I left after accumulating lots more, I'd pared my client list down to about 200 or 300 million. Basically grew times 100 at JP Morgan, and then went and started a business. We had a very good business. We managed to do that very quickly. And now today have a business that, had some success, had a good business, but they were struggling with some very kind of like foundational things. And that's what I brought. And, in spite of all that, today I could be sitting here and I could be in any number of bad places, right? And in here, right? And so I choose not to be there. I choose not to go there, to live there, to stay there. And that, 4 years ago when I learned about meaning, that was everything. And so, and that's where I live today. So, so it's fun to talk. I love talking business. I mean, you and I spend a lot of time, when we're, chatting back and forth, whether it's texting or I'll be actually talking on the phone, which nobody seems to do anymore. We talk about this stuff. And so I love business but for me, it goes back to the reason why I'm achieving today and why the business is in a good place, at least as far as my contribution goes. It's based on that, right? Because I have the gift of getting to experience some of this stuff in terms of the success, and it's fun to win. I mean, anyone who says they don't like winning is either, has a wrong meaning or it's like delusional, right? I mean, everyone loves winning.
It's the experience is winning, and the meaning you put to it is what, right?
Well, exactly. And the thing is that it used to be when I would I used to enjoy wins for about 38 seconds, right? And then I was on to the next thing. And I remember my partner and I in Chicago, we put together a deal, and like our 20th month or something like that, inside of 2 years, we actually bought a company of the same size and doubled our business that way, which is not totally normal to be a startup and then do an acquisition within 2 years. I mean, it's hard enough to be a startup. It's hard enough to be an entrepreneur, and then to buy another company, integrate their culture. I mean, there's a lot of challenge, but he's a brilliant guy, one of the best business people I've ever known. And I have my own skills. We put them together and we made it work. Right.
Sure.
So, so I remember we had our day one, right, with our newly formed company with these guys, and had them in our office downtown on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and did the whole thing, had non-alcoholic champagne, and like did group photos, had a photographer there, and just brilliant. Like, I mean, it was very cool, very exciting. And everyone left the office, and it's just him and I and our executive assistant. And we looked at each other, we gave each other a hug, and went in his office and talked about what was next. That was it.
Right. There you go.
That was
the mind of an entrepreneur.
That was it. That was the whole celebrate. I mean, we celebrated with everybody, but it was mostly we were working, right? They were in. Sure. We were working while they were in the office because they are now new partners and employees. And so they leave. We literally hug, like like, dude, this is awesome. And then, okay, let's get back to work.
Did you open the alcohol-based
we did when they were in the office. By,
all right, yeah,
by the time that they left, it was like, let's, Peggy, clean all this up, please. Get this stuff out of the office. Like, it's time to go back to work. So, so that was me several years ago. That was in 2013. That was several years ago now. 2020, Adrian, I enjoy those things. And in fact, 2020, Adrian, doesn't, like, I recognize my own contribution to those things as a professional and as an operator. Mm-hmm. But today, I look at like the people that work for me today, and in my model of the world, I work for them, because while I make the decisions and hire and fire and make the wages and profit share and so on and so forth, like, if I'm there to serve them, right? And so, so that's a very different.
That's a real orange energy.
It
is,
statement,
right?
But it's not where I was at. Where I was at several years ago was like, I was a chest thumper. Wow, look what I did. I'm so young and so smart, and all that, just
I remember it, man. I remember those
I'm
days
so
too.
Significant kind of and that's, I mean, I'm grateful for him, because without that version of me, I wouldn't be this version of me. But today I get to enjoy those moments so much more. And I do, and I celebrate. I don't just wait to celebrate the big things. I celebrate the little things too, and the little wins, and the implementations that I used to just take for granted. Now it's like, this is, these things, these little mini projects are the business, right?
Sure. Every little small piece, that 1 millimeter
it's a very
shift,
different, right? Yes. So it's a very different, today I'm more productive as a business person. I'm enjoying all of the little wins so much more, because I was just so focused on what's next before. Never is too much, but I hardly enjoyed those moments. And today I live for those moments, and it's a more fulfilling way to do this.
Well, you're quite an innovator. I mean, you not only just change business models, right, and different things that you get involved in, you change your life. You innovated your life, right?
Yeah.
And that big innovation, really, I guess one of them was just understanding the meaning you're putting to things, and understanding that you have control over the meaning. The experience is the experience, right? It's always in the past. You'll never change the experience, so why dwell on it? Right. It is never, ever going to change, right? They say forgiveness of self and forgiveness of other people is, giving up all hope for a better past. The past is the past, right? So, what are we going to attach the meaning to and move forward and really, have that exciting life that we know that we can have, because it's all within our grasp. It's all again in redefining the meaning. So you as an innovator, I mean, I've watched you innovate your company. I've known you for several years now. We met at a Tony Robbins event, a date with destiny, if you will. And fun, exciting seminar. And I'm glad that we reached out to each other and have become great friends over the last couple of years.
For sure.
But, again, because I guess for the people that are listening, if you had to say 2 or 3 things that really, if you had to summarize, I guess, the 2 or 3 things, top things to re-innovate your life, because you're an innovator. You're the guy that, that starts things. You're the guy that, is a concept guy. You can take a concept and make it a reality. And you took your life from what, to most would be seemingly, devastation, and you re-innovated your life, right? So what would you say the top 3 things are that you could teach our audience about what it takes to innovate your life? How do you go from a thought, I really wish things were different for me. I really wish I was, back to where I was. I don't want to be living with my folks. I don't want to be driving a car for hire. How do you go from that total devastation, eating out of your car and, doing what you can to survive, to actually making something concrete, making it a massive change?
Well, I think that's a really good question. So first of all, it was, when I was debating on like taking my own life, it was first of all the decision that, like, no matter what, I will find a way. And then I just held that even when it looked like there was not a way. I believed I was going to find a way, and going back to I was saying a few minutes ago about, I totally lost this, about being from Western PA. There was this reference point I had, about crashing and burning so young at 40, and the Super Bowl against the Cardinals, the Steelers, we were down by like 4 points, I want to say, or 3 or 4 points. Maybe it was 4 points. Or we were up by a few points, and then the Cardinals scored with like 3 minutes left, or like less than 5 minutes left in the game. And I remember watching Coach Tomlin after that, in an interview later, I think it was America's Game, was talking about how his instinctive response was, hey, it's good that they scored quick, right? Because it was a quick strike to Larry Fitzgerald, who just was off the races. Nobody was going to catch him. And so he was like, hey, it's good that he went all up and down the sideline saying, hey, it's good that they scored quick. Let's get back out there. And that was, for me, that was a huge reference point. Like, I will not, I'm glad it happened now. And as I started to think about it, it was like I went from I'm not going to quit to I started creating what do I want my story to be, right?
Sure.
And I started going back to, and I went back to so it was like I took the I'm not going to quit, and I started thinking, what do I want, right? How do I want my life to look? And so, being a dreamer, a daydreamer, I started picturing myself. I mean, before I had a job, I pictured myself in the car, because I love the idea of motion and doing deals. So I was always a big car phone person, whether it was handheld or Bluetooth or whatever. So, I would imagine myself doing deals and being in the car, being a professional again when there was nothing happening.
Well, yeah, and we've seen you on Facebook Live. You love being in your car.
Right,
and you get excited.
Right.
You do parties in your car. It's
right,
pretty amazing.
Right. So I love the motion, and so I started picturing what it would be like to be contributing significantly in business and doing deals and viable again as a business person. And I started picturing that, and then I just kept developing that, and then I realized I've when I got out of my head and out of how bad things are, I started thinking about, well, I've actually experienced a lot. I have a lot of reference points. I mean, at that point where I was at 0, at 40, I had a successful large corporate career, and I'd also had a successful startup, which is more than a lot of people ever do ever, right?
Right.
And so I started going back to that, and I was so I started going back to the things, there were all these experiences, and I also realized it wasn't just the successes that could propel me forward. It was the things that had gone the worst, right? Sure. It was the failures were actually the most valuable.
Right. The lessons you take away from that.
Yeah. So I started taking the meaning from the failures, and I started going, okay, well, some of this stuff I had control over, some of it I didn't. It was going to happen anyway. Right. So I started looking at those failures and remaking the meaning of those. And so, the innovation was deciding not to, starting to get a vision and like a real clear picture of what it could be. And then just going there all the time. And then as I developed those images in my head, it became real. Right. Within a month, it all happened. I had this guy that I work for today in this business is a friend of my dad's. He called me. That's why I say construction found me. I wasn't looking to get in construction. He heard that I was a smart guy, in heavy air quotes, and wanted smart people in his business. Didn't know anything about what I had done other than the fact that I'd owned a business, and invited me in, and the rest is history, right?
Right.
So
you see yourself happening. That's the first step. You absolutely, you don't just visualize. You don't just put a few things down on a piece of paper. You totally embrace the visualization of you are already there.
Yeah.
You basically see in your mind the finished product, success. Great. So that would probably if that summarizes basically what the first thing you said, right?
Yeah.
So what would be another way that you innovated yourself after you see yourself doing it and you're like, okay, construction came to me? Do you think that and I believe in this, that the universe provides the answers? When you're totally focused and you're totally vision and you're committed, your mind is committed to going in one direction, the universe opens itself up and says, oh, here's this resource, here's this money, here's the job, here's the this, here's the that. Here's everything you need to be successful once you stay focused in that vision.
Well, there are levels too. So I was here in 2016, and then, things in terms of with my personal life with my kids did not go the way I thought they were going to go at the end of 16. And so there were more opportunities for growth, right? Sure. was true in the business as well. Because I came in, I added a lot of value in a very short period of time in the business, and then got like young man's disease and thought, well, hey, I can do anything, right?
Is that what that's called? Young man's disease? Well, I still have it, so just.
Well, I do. At times I do as well.
Yeah.
So I started doing things that I stepped out of like what I was good at and I thought innovating the business, and I really blew I blew it on a couple of big things, and it cost the business a lot for 2 years. We posted 2 years of losses. So, by the way, when you're a young CEO that's never been in the business and hasn't earned the respect of your staff, and you have 2 years of losses, life gets pretty interesting in a small business. Okay.
Yeah.
So I could share a lot more war stories that we don't have time for today, but, but the thing, the next thing I did is that like, I did not, like, even when it wasn't going the way, like it wasn't becoming what I saw, I did not stop. I did not quit. Like I kept going, I followed through, and I also adapted like crazy. The thing that I think we look at like these stories of Apple, for example, right? Apple's the easiest one because they're one of the largest companies on the planet. So people forget that in order for the iPhone to happen, the Macintosh had to have a abysmal launch, right? In '84. Right. The Apple II had to be the most boring thing on the market, but was still like their breadbasket, how they fed everybody. And they had to produce the Lisa, which was also an abysmal failure. And they invested in General Magic, which most people haven't heard of, which was the superstars of Silicon Valley back in the late 90s. They created the Sony, I think it was a Sony Magic Link, which was this big hunk of plastic and hardware that was, it was the earliest version of the iPhone, which was also an abysmal failure. And General Magic went out of business after raising $100 million in a public equity offering. Right. People forget all that had to happen for the iPhone to happen, as well as those people went back to work for Apple and created the iPod. Without the iPod and without General Magic, rising to being the most innovative company and then crashing and burning, there's no iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. So,
right. Well, there's no Facebook without MySpace, right?
Right.
People
MySpace, Friendster,
yeah, all of that, right?
And without Zuckerberg getting dissed, I mean, if you've seen The Social Network, there's a lot of truth in how the whole face smash became Facebook now. One of the most innovative companies on the planet. Say what you will about them, but they're an innovative company, right?
Absolutely. So you had the vision, but then you take action. And even when you're failing, and one of the signs of a great leader, I listened to General Schwarzkopf speak once, quite a while back, when he was talking about Desert Storm and putting the forces together from around the world. How personalities don't get along necessarily with each other, even though they're neighboring countries and they even were the same allies, don't necessarily like each other all the time, right? Because, hey, listen, when you're a leader, you make decisions. That's what leaders do. They decide, right, wrong, or indifferent. Yeah. You make a decision. If you're going down the wrong way, back. Adapt. Make a decision, but do it timely and do it right and do it often, because that's how success happens, right?
I think that, so I agree 100%. And I think that, the next, in terms of, to put it in a business context, after you've decided to be resolute and you're going forward with something, the next two critical things are listen, leave your ego out of it, and adapt. And when you think you've adapted enough, adapt again, right? Because, I'll give you an example. So one of the most critical people in our business right now, for the first couple of years, he and I did not see eye to eye. And that's podcast speak for it was a very tumultuous relationship. And he's a brilliant business person, and his expertise and what he does, he has tons of experience and he understands a lot. And he tried to get my attention on something that we were doing, like, don't do this. And because he and I were at odds and didn't get along, I did not listen to him.
Right.
If I would just, set my ego aside and listen to him, it was a 6-figure decision, hundreds of thousands of dollars we lost and would not have lost and would have made. I mean, we're talking a big swing over the cost of me not listening to him because I let my emotions get involved. Right.
Your ego gets in the way, and you can choose, right? You want to be right or you want to be rich.
Right. Exactly.
I'll let my ego get in the way. I got to win. I got to be right. Got to win at all costs. Right.
Well, and he's one of the guys that I work for today. Right. So when I was talking about working for people, he's one of the people that I lean on him heavily now. And now it's in terms of our small staff, it's one of the better partnerships, because I'll go to him and say, hey, can you, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think?
Sure.
Right. And I get all this feedback back, and I wouldn't even have asked him a year and a half ago. Right. And so there's so much, it's like I missed a lot by not, because my ego is involved, because I'm this and I'm that, right. I'm this, whatever, this self-image of myself. And I just didn't have the humility to go, I don't know the answer. And I'm not, I shouldn't be so certain about this because I don't really know the answer.
Right. Right. Yeah. But again, leader, you take a chance, right? You make a decision and you do something, but keeping your ego out of it and doing what's best for the company, right? My company runs on 3 principles: do your best, do the right thing, show other people that you care. And I ripped that from somebody else who talked to me, right?
That's really good.
When you act on those 3 principles, ego doesn't really have a space in that space, right? Or when you're coming from a place of gratitude, when you're changing the meaning of things, right? Ego doesn't really have a space to live in there either.
Right.
So, we're coming close to the close. One more tip that you'd say as far as being innovative. So you see yourself there, you definitely take action, and you keep moving. You get your ego out of the way. One last tip.
Yeah, that's a good question. One last tip. I think that one of the other things that I've done in terms of innovating and adapting is that I spend a lot of time, like I don't allow myself to get sucked into working in the business all the time. So I do work in the business. I also work on the business. And I work on the business a lot.
Yeah.
And so, so I consistently over my career, but in terms of the business that I'm running today, I work on the business a lot. And so today I have a very crystal clear picture of where I'm taking this business from every measurable, like revenue, what I'm looking for out of our cost of goods sold, overhead costs, the things that I can innovate from a project management standpoint. I mean, I could take you through any number of things that I'm measuring. And so today, I've gotten very, once you've done some of these foundational things, you got to get real specific. So today, I have I just use iPhone notes. So I have an iPhone note that I pull it up and it's my version of a to-do list, but the very top of it has how basically the big outcomes that I want in the business right now. And then the next 4 or 5 things are the 5 ways I think we're going to get those. And then after I've scrolled past those, then I get to what my action items are, or like my next steps, I think. But because I'm always focused on the outcome, oftentimes I'll delete those, or I'll, have someone else do them. They don't even have to be done by me. And so I've taken, those things, and I have now a specific system that obviously we're not going to get into today, but a specific system that I leverage so that like I'm always spending time on the most important things. And I have time to listen. The thing about being in business is it's not like drinking from one fire hose. That's the thing. People go, oh, I'm drinking from fire hose. No, you're drinking from 20 all at once, and you get shot in the back, right? And the bullets are whizzing by your head. It's so much more than that. And so because that's what business is, like I have this clear picture of, from an outcome standpoint, like revenue, cost of goods, overhead. I've got things we're targeting in the business, ways we're going to innovate this year, where that's going, and, hiring, all across the board, developing our people internally. And then when you do that, like innovation comes faster because I'm a heavy note taker. So my partner and I were just talking about this yesterday, unrelated to this. I have like 2,300 notes now in my Apple iPhone notes that I've collected over the last like 13 years.
That's incredible.
So there's probably, I've got some that are just a page. I've got some that are probably 20 pages. So I just did some rough math. There's like, I'm not joking, like 4,000 pages of notes that I've taken in the last 13 years. And I refer back to them. So now I have a library of, it's never too late to start this. I have a library, and I've got an organizational system, again, that I won't get into, in terms of like, I've built my life by outcomes and categorized my entire life. And so now like my business has a category. And so when I go in there, it's like everything's organized and available. It's like, it's my version of what Iron Man, you know, like where he's moving things around with his hands. You know, I do that, but like I have all this in my iPhone notes. So I go into one note in one category, and it's got these outcomes. And so, you know, the implementable, the applicable version of that for anyone who's going, this sounds crazy, like this guy's insane. That is true. But the applicable version of that is start somewhere, right? Start with an outcome, decide why it matters, you know, get conviction about why you're doing this thing, because without any reasons, you're not going to follow through. And then write it down, like take notes.
Have a plan.
And then, and when you have an idea, have a way to capture it. I just use I put it under the heading of, I know this is going to sound brilliant, capture, right? So whenever I have an abstract idea, I know it's genius, groundbreaking.
Yes. Innovative again.
Put it under capture. And so
Right.
I have lots of notes that are captures, but even today now, and Tony Robbins talks about this, you know, our super mentor. So even the habit now, because I've done this for 13 years, actually I've done it probably for 15 years in my iPhone for 13, because I've done this for so many years now, just the physical act of like, you know, typing with my thumbs and putting those notes in actually gets it deeper in my short and long-term memory. So I have this library now that I pull from. And so as a business person, I'm innovating at a rapid, how do I say this? I'm innovating much quicker with more speed because I have so many more reference points today.
Yeah.
And so I just keep taking it. Like when I think I've innovated a lot, I go, well, there's got to be more. You know, what else is there? I ask myself that question. Great question, by the way, because it'll take you to what else there is, right? So I ask myself the question, bam, and I've got what else. So it's kind of like anything else. Like if you really want to do it, I believe that, you know, I look at the greatest innovators, and, you know, they are clear on what they want. They're clear on what they're shooting for. They're clear on why they're doing it. They have a real mission, and they're also obsessive note takers. And so I've kind of married those things, and they have even if they look like they're disorganized, they have an organization. There's a system to it.
Even if it
looks to the outside. Yeah. Even if it looks like insane to one of us on the outside, there's a system there. And so I put those things into my own life and business. And so that's how, you know, I have the time to run a business successfully, a small business, and have time to have, you know, real friendships with people like you that I connect with, you know, and it's not like always, you know, it's not rushed. When we get on the phone, we enjoy talking to each other, and I have time with my partner, my life partner, and she and I do stuff, and we have fun, and we play and goof around, and I'm not stressed out, even though I could be. You know, if I didn't choose to live this way, I would easily be stressed out. Like a lot of people I know that will be listening to this are living, you know, it's easy to stay there. It's a choice not to.
Well, that comes all the way back full circle to the start of the conversation. We're talking about meaning, right? The meaning you put to time with Tina, right, is important. The meaning you put to taking time with your friends is important. So you do it, right? We could all look at this and go, well, I should be working on my business. I should be working on, you know, I got to be doing this and this, because the action item list never goes away. There's always more to can do, right? Always. Yes. But if you're not taking time or you're not changing the meaning, if you will, about being productive in your business. I'm productive in my business when I do A, B, and C. I don't have to go A to Z every single day, because there'll always be A to Z every day. But if I get A, B, and C done today, guess what? I got time to go work out. I get time to spend with my partner. I get time to spend with my kids. I get time to spend with my friends. I get time to spend for myself. I get time to meditate, whatever, right? So, and that's the key. So Adrian, thanks a ton. Really, seriously, brother. I mean, I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah.
For being on my show today. You absolutely embody the orange crushing it. And for those that don't really understand what that means, orange crushing it is just the desire to be driven, to be enthusiastic, to win, to feel successful, to feel important, special, significant. We all have it inside of us, and we all tap into it when we need to, and we all want more of it. And Adrian, you embody that passion
I
and
appreciate that.
results. And again, real pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I want to thank you. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you or just even get to know you?
It's a good question. Well, unlike a lot of other people, I don't have a public Facebook business profile. Actually, really, the thing that I'm the most active on is my personal Facebook page, and I have turned that on so people can follow me.
Sure.
So just like a public profile, because I figure I've got all these, everything I've ever done is on there. And, if anyone's interested in learning, if you're interested in more of this, not because I'm so special or fancy or whatever, but if you've connected with something I've said, a lot of my story is on my Facebook page. I've shared that with Facebook friends, but I also have a lot of it I've shared publicly, actually, as a public post. So maybe, do you put the link? Can you put the link?
Yeah, it's Adrian R. Park is your Facebook name,
Yeah,
right?
I want to say it's Facebook/Adrian.R.Park, I believe is what it is.
There you go. So if you want to touch base with Adrian, look him up on Facebook. He runs, and by the way, randomly he'll throw out just a watch party with the greatest rave music.
Yeah, it's good.
fun.
I call them awake parties. There's no charge. It's just something I do for our community, and it's basically it's like a virtual festival meets a Tony Robbins event, meets like the greatest chat ever.
It's fun. It's a fun little party, especially, who knows how long this pandemic's going to keep going on. So if you another one, get involved with Adrian, you'll find out about this stuff, and they're a fun way to connect with a ton of people all at one time, and listen to some good music and have a good time.
Yeah.
So, Adrian, again, thanks for being on here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to having you guys again. Again, this is Orange Crushing It. I'm Frank Clark. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. If you did, write us a great review, share it with a bunch of your friends, subscribe to the channel. And, as always, having a great day and stay inspiring.